This week I learned people have short memories, or was reminded, I guess. How so? Well, there's 3 answers to that. Kia ora, I'm Kimmy, I talk F1 in the world's second worst accent, and these are my 3 conclusions following the 2025 Hungarian Grand Prix. As the old cliche goes, you're only as good as your last race, but that short memory kind of feels like it's becoming more and more relevant to Formula One on the whole, rather than just the drivers. For instance, last week the prevailing knee-jerk reaction was that race control's conservative approach to safety was the final nail in the coffin of wet races, even though only 2 weeks before in Silverstone, the wet to dry to wet to dry conditions, well, they produced an absolute thriller, and last year you'd be challenged by a heck of a lot of fans if you asserted anything other than Brazil being the race of the season. This weekend, it's like a bunch of people have forgotten the amount of complaining that was going on about Max Verstappen's domination era and how much they wish there was a fight at the front. Sure, on one hand, you have the Lando Norris fans praising his side of the garage for choosing the alternate strategy, but then you have the Oscar Piastri fans and a bunch of news articles asking whether or not what McLaren did was fair. And let's be clear here, part of being a well-rounded, complete Formula One driver is the ability to call the strategy from the cockpit, stand by your decision, and then ultimately be able to actually execute the plan. Both Lando and Oscar had the chance to go for the less favoured one-stop strategy. Oscar chose not to take the risk, and in those conditions, in that specific race, it was the wrong call. Yeah, sure, he had more to lose if it all fell apart, and there was no way he could have predicted that Charles Leclerc's Ferrari would take a dive off a cliff in the last stint, but that was still ultimately his choice based on his feeling on the day. I don't know about you, but I'm just happy that the gap hasn't extended out and the lead of the championship is still the difference between winning a race and coming fourth. So I'm going to ask the question, would you rather one driver pull away further in the Drivers' Championship and have less tension at the front, or would you rather that fight stay alive for as long as possible? Because this year, we're not going to have 5 drivers from 4 teams scrapping it out for the win. We've got 2 from the same team, and that's not going to change. And if that one fight that we have left at the front is going to continue, then strategic offsets like what we saw on Sunday are going to be a part of what keeps this whole thing exciting. And sometimes your fave, unfortunately, might get the short end of the stick or make a wrong call. That's part of racing. Sure, McLaren says they're free to fight, but one more incident like Canada, and I'm pretty sure the alternative to strategy offsets is going to become team orders and a procession at the front, and I know which one I prefer. My second conclusion that's related to this kind of chronic amnesia is that we seem to have collectively forgotten that Lewis Hamilton has been in the misery trenches multiple times over the course of this current ground effect era and had his fair share of despondency when he was with Mercedes as well. There's been multiple times where he's been equally as down on himself as Lando Norris has a habit of doing. And what we saw this weekend, it was really kind of uncomfortable to watch and a level of extreme that has you wondering how bad things are behind the scenes, but it's not exactly a new thing. And who knows, maybe his comments about this weekend, him being the problem, that maybe Ferrari needs to change the driver, warrant the questions people are asking about his future with the team come the end of the year. But with a new regulation cycle coming and with Lewis struggling in general through this generation of car, I think the self-deprecating doom and gloom feels more like a classic Lewis Hamilton coping mechanism than a serious hint at throwing in the towel. And I'm not going to put on my tin hat and start speculating about what's going on at Ferrari, even though, like any normal person, I've certainly let my mind wander and wonder and come to some conclusions, but one thing that I've maintained ever since Ferrari signed Lewis 1.5 years ago is that finding the right balance with the car to suit both Hamilton and Leclerc was going to be an uphill battle. Their driving styles look similar on the surface, but when you actually dig into it, they're quite different. But even having said that, the reality is Lewis's struggles with qualifying have been as much a product of how tight the field spread is as it is a deficit to his teammate, because when you look at it on the timing charts, he's not all that much slower than Charles. They're just in a situation where losing out to your teammate by 1.5 tenths is the difference between getting knocked out of qualifying and making it through to compete for pole. And with the field being so close together this year and with so many tracks where you need a big race pace advantage to be able to make an overtake, much of Lewis's struggles this season are as much to do with the generation of car and Ferrari not quite getting their concept right as they are about having a small qualifying gap to Charles. And I'm sure he expected to be regularly equaling Charles' pace as a bare minimum and preferably beating him at this point. But make no mistake, Ferrari is Charles' team. He's their boy, brought through the ranks since he was a teenager. That car's been built on feedback from Charles Leclerc since 2019. And right now, it's Lewis Hamilton's chance to put his stamp on a Ferrari chassis for 2026. I don't see him letting go of that opportunity. Speaking of opportunities, this is yours to take a moment to click the like button and subscribe to my channel if you're enjoying this video. I try to put out new stuff every Tuesday and Thursday, but if you're like me and rely on things showing up on your YouTube homepage rather than your subscription feed, then liking content from those channels that you enjoy is a really great way to make sure that happens. If you're the kind of person who likes to support creators on Patreon and would like access to my downloadable and self-calculating session and championship tracker spreadsheet, then the link is down in the description as well as here on screen. A huge thank you to everyone who supports me over there. I really appreciate it. Now let's get back to the final conclusion. Aston Martin has been kind of steadily plugging away at the last few rounds in a bit of a midfield stealth attack that's been overshadowed by Sauber's surprise success. Sauber's surprise success, a lot of alliteration. They've targeted races where they can succeed and they're putting in the results. And sure, Spa was miserable, but with double points in both Hungary and Silverstone, and with Fernando Alonso scoring in 5 out of the last 6 races, if they can continue to take advantage of the tight midfield in races where they can make small gains, they're well back into the fight for 5th. Particularly if they continue to just make little tweaks with their car. With James Vowles stating that Williams is done with updates for the year, it's becoming more and more likely that the battle for 5th will be between Aston Martin and Sauber. And with the wind tunnel allocation already having its mid-year reset and Aston Martin sitting in 8th when that happened, they've also got plenty of aerodynamic testing up their sleeve for the remainder of the year and for their 2026 car development. The question will be now whether or not they want to prioritise the opportunity for extra prize money at the end of the year and continue with an update program, or if they want to focus all of their ATR time on next season. Whatever the case, Aston Martin is kind of sitting pretty for next year. Plenty of aero testing time in the lead up, an upwards trajectory in the second quarter of the season, and a Fernando Alonso who somehow still doesn't seem to be slowing down despite being the oldest F1 driver since Graham Hill. And you know what? Even as haters out there have to admit Lance Stroll has had his moments this season as well. So what did you take away from such a strategy-heavy Grand Prix? Are you curious about Ferrari's struggles and inclined to believe they're running their car too low and suffering the consequences? Do you think that racing bulls will come back to snatch 5th out of the hands of Williams, Sauber and Aston Martin? And what's your opinion on McLaren's intra-team battle? Let me know down in the comments. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope to see you here next time. Ka kite.